Hey guys, so in this video we're going to talk about my mushroom experience that I had about 2 weeks ago. We went to Queensland, met up with Kai Lives, who I've collaborated before, and it was pretty interesting. Like it's been a while since I've tripped on mushrooms. I think maybe, I don't know, maybe close to a year. Kind of conservative when it comes to, you're too distracting, Barbie, go away.
Sit.
You're so good.
Sit.
You're so adorable.
Come here.
Alright, chicken.
Get her up here.
Come. So I've made a video on this experience, which will be in the link below if you want to check out a more cinematic version of it. But this video I wanted to kind of break it down and yeah, give you guys a trip report. So hope you enjoy. Here we go. So we went to Queensland, met up with Kai Lives, and he took us to it's not really a secret spot, but a pretty good spot where there's a waterfall and awesome nature. It's isolated from people and it was just absolutely beautiful. And we're walking through the cow paddocks where we found mushrooms growing from cow shit, and the species that we had were what Aussies call blue meanies, but the scientific name is Panaeolus cyanescens. These mushrooms are very high in psilocin and have very low amounts of psilocybin, which makes the onset very quick, right? Because psilocybin has to break down into psilocin, and psilocin is the molecule that actually makes you trip, which I found really interesting. And apparently, what I got told from Kai, that they're pretty gentle, at least compared to the ones that we have here in Victoria, which are the psilocybe subaeruginosus.
Wait, the blue meanies?
Yeah, the blue meanies. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll get to that in a moment. So we found a few, and then we also found some psilocybe cubensis mushrooms, which Kai actually planted with spores. I don't know how long ago, but it was awesome that, you know, these mushrooms
That's
grew
so
there.
cool.
Yeah, exactly. Because they don't usually grow in that area.
Yeah.
So the setting was early morning, really hot day. Obviously there's a river and a waterfall surrounded by luscious trees and forests and nature sounds and snakes, probably.
It was
spiders.
It was like a hidden little waterfall because, yeah, you walk past this cow paddock and then in between the trees and it's like, waterfall.
What did Kai call it? Like Garden of Eden?
Garden of Eden, yeah.
So he has a really special connection with this place, and it was absolutely amazing, right? So the setting was pristine. The set, my mindset going into it was, couldn't have been better. I'm at a really good place in my life. I'm not struggling with any significant mental health issues or trying to overcome this darkness or in a low point of my life. So I was like, I'm cruising, really good. And obviously tripping with good friends. This is our first time that we've tripped together properly, because we've taken mushrooms before about 4 years ago, but it didn't. Yeah, for you it didn't kick in, but for me it was like, you look like a divine goddess Cleopatra shining in the sun. Yeah, it was awesome. And so this was our first tripping experience, official tripping experience. I ate one mushroom. One singular cubensis mushroom. You had about a handful of the
blue meanies.
cyanescens.
Yeah.
And so we ate them.
And then we jumped in the waterfall.
We jumped in the waterfall. And for you guys, it kicked in really quick because you had the cyanescens, which are really high in psilocin, like I said.
Yeah.
Whereas I had the cubensis, which is higher in psilocybin. So it takes a little bit of extra time for my body to digest it. And yeah, these guys were flying. Yesenia was having a bit of a hard time. And we're going to talk about her trip report in a separate video. Yeah, so you were freaking out. You wanted to kind of get out of there for a bit.
Yeah, I couldn't be close to it.
It was just too much energy, right? Like, yeah.
Again, it was too much for me.
It was too much for her. And I decided to take a little bit extra, and I ended up having, I think, like 3 little cyanescens as well, because the mushrooms weren't kicking in that much. I felt it a little bit, but it was like, I don't know. I think I could have gone a lot more. I had zero visuals. I had a bit of that feeling that I was crossing over the other side, but
it was
not
good
much.
Though, because you were able to kind of hold space for me during my come up.
True.
And then during your come up was when I was there for you.
Because your graph was like, and mine was like, steady, steady, slow and steady wins the race. That was my come up. And so yeah, I took a couple cyanescens, and that's when it really kicked in. I was like, oh shit, I started to have that come up anxiety. But I'm familiar with this feeling. I just knew that I had to just ride through the wave, and so I just sat there meditating, and my mind started playing like this sort of cartoonishly madness scenes, and just, I don't know, like for example, I would hear the crickets and the birds talking to each other, and my mind would be like big leisure, like, oh yeah, mate, what's going on? Fucking blah blah blah. I don't know.
Is that why you had a goofy smile on your face like the whole time? Yeah. The whole time. You
Did
just
I?
like,
Yeah, exactly.
yeah, like the goofiest smile. And I'm like, oh, he's having a good time.
Yeah, it was like watching a sitcom, right? Starring nature. But then I had a little bit of anxiety come up, and then the visuals would start to get really intense, like more detailed fractals and patterns and things like this, until it would form into this really intricate piece, and then it would just send me the message like, go take a shit. Like, because sometimes, you know, your bodily functions or bodily sensations can manifest visually, you know what I mean? So obviously when you need to take a shit, that's probably going to show itself as anxiety.
Funny, it's probably your brain just kind of being like, he's not receiving the message, boys. We're gonna have to show it to him.
Yeah, he's like, hey, follow me. Take a shit, boy. I'm like, oh fuck. And I'm like, I knew this, and I sometimes I stall with these kind of things, because I'm like, oh man, I'm obviously taking a shit's the right thing to do, but like, I got no tissue paper. I wasn't prepared for this.
No, we weren't.
So Kai came over, he's like, hey, how's it going, buddy? And I'm like, yeah, I think I need to take a shit. He's like, go take a shit. I'm like, yeah, you're right. It's so simple. And so I went up the hill, and it was like blazing hot, like 30 degrees, 35
really
degrees,
hot.
like really hot. And then I just see Yesenia walking, like she's just, I could see she's struggling just in the sun with an empty water bottle as well.
Because like you said, I couldn't be near the waterfall, so I went away for a good while. And
yeah, you're going through your own trip, and you're like, babe, help me. And I'm like,
I need clean water.
I'm kind of going through my little ordeal right now.
And I was like,
love to help you.
I'm so sorry. Carry on. I'm like, I'll just go over here.
Let me just take care of business first. And you know, I found my little spot. Of course, I had to go through all these spider webs and be cautious of snakes, because you know it is Australia. Always have to keep in mind. And then I squatted, took my shit, and then like a kookaburra is laughing at me in the background, like, and I'm like, yeah, I know, I look freaking ridiculous. And then I started thinking of like how just humans were so like shameful and insecure about just normal, everyday, animalistic functions that every single human on Earth has to do, but for some reason it's just so embarrassing. Like, I was just thinking, like, imagine if someone just walked past, and I know it's normal, but how embarrassed would you feel?
Yeah,
like,
of course.
Like, oh, I'm sorry. And, but after I took my shit, all that fear and anxiety just completely. And then the trip started for me. And, you know, classic psilocybin visuals where vibrant colors. See, I would feel the interconnectedness of nature and how I'm like this animated earth, and it's not me really moving, it's Mother Nature using me as a conduit. So like, for example, if I'm climbing up a waterfall, it'd be like the waterfall climbing itself, but through me, if that makes sense. And it's so trippy, but like, as soon as I'd stay still and meditate, which was, I think, probably the majority of this trip, just sitting there meditating, just kind of, you know, self-reflecting, things like this. But the longer I would stay seated, the more intense the trip would go. And then I'd start having like this ayahuasca trip in daytime. That's what it felt like. Like I was tripping on ayahuasca. Like it was pretty intense. Even just, yeah, and I find that like the more I trip, the more sensitive I get from it. And also my desire to trip becomes less and less and less. Like I'll do it every once in a while just to kind of, I don't know, in this case it was just to connect with nature and have fun with friends, because I rarely use psychedelics for this purpose. I've always taken it like too overly serious in the past, like for healing and have these shamanic level experiences and transcend the ego and all that kind of stuff. Whereas this time my intention was just to connect with nature, you know, and just have a good time, but in a respectful way, of course. And so I'm sitting there, the trip's getting more intense, the visuals getting really intense. And so I would have to move. And as soon as I would move, I would force to be present, and then I would move through nature and just feeling the energy through the ground, like, I don't know, man, like the electricity through the rocks, kind of cleaning my body, and I don't know, it sounds really hippie, but just connecting with nature and having an awesome time, and then helping Yesenia because she was having a rough time.
Oh God.
And I remember going, like, sitting there, and then I'd feel something from the trees and the bushes, or almost like I was getting hypnotized, like some nature spirit was trying to take my attention and kind of lure me towards them, sort of like a trap. And that's what you were talking about.
You didn't tell me that.
Oh, didn't I? Yeah.
No.
Because I was sitting there, right, and I would stare at the trees in the distance, and then I'd feel something almost possess me in the way where, like, my head would go on its side, and then the visuals would start to go like a spiral, sort of like someone doing a hypnotic thing.
Oh.
Yeah. And I would be like, and it'd get more intense, and I'd have to, like, shake myself off from this. I'm like, what the fuck was that? You know, I don't know what it was, but it was a bit weird.
You did not tell me that.
Yeah, because it's like, you know, we all have like this, not all, but some people have this fallacy to nature where we just think everything from nature is good. But like in the context of nature, for example, there are some plants that can heal you and other plants that will poison you.
Yeah.
And there are some plants that look really beautiful, right? So they can get your attention, but then you realize that it's a trap or something. Like, for example, a Venus flytrap would be the first thing that comes to mind. How it looks like this nice flower, so then bugs go into it, and then it's actually like a monster that consumes you, sort of thing. Yeah. And I feel like that sort of as above, so below principle applies to nature. And there are just, I don't know, man, there was just something weird, but it was all good. I was like just aware of it, and so I just, did my own thing, jumped in the waterfall, took a swim. And then this dude came, Travis, and he sparked up a joint, and I was like, what the fuck? I don't know if I should do it. It's like this Canadian dude. How about we... Do you guys smoke weed? How about...
but he was one of those, like, really, like, stoner, like, hey guys, do you smoke weed?
Hey man, hey guys.
Do you guys partake?
Yeah. Like classic surfer, dreaded Hawaiian sort of looking dude that has like Hakuna Matata tattooed on his chest, like full stereotypical hippie. Yeah. But like best guy to have around, but whatever.
Yeah, he's a nice, very nice man.
Yeah. And then he sparked up a joint. Funny. And I'm always like sort of, I don't know. I'm on the fence about mixing weed with mushrooms, but I guess it depends. And then you had a drag.
Yep.
You was like, hey, yeah, of course I did. And then you were like, yeah, you were flying. You were good. Yeah,
no, I was fine. At that time, I was ready to be done with the trip. So like,
yeah, because you wanted to leave. You just wanted to ride the wave.
Yeah, I wanted to move on. And I found that weed kind of helps me with that. So when Travis pulled out the joint, he was like, "Do you guys smoke?" And I'm like, "I certainly do." He was nice enough to share with us, and then with Tom as well. I'm like, I said to him, I'm like, "It's entirely up to you. It can either, you know, boost you back up, or really just kind of put you back into a good level."
Yeah, it could like catapult you to a whole other dimension, or it could level you out. That's what Terrence McKenna called the leveler. Take a bomber, leveler. Yeah. So I ended up taking a drag. I'm like, all right, one drag, and I'm lying down, right, looking at the clouds.
And I was giving you a massage through all
this
as well.
Yeah. You were, it was the best. Oh my god.
I was just like vibing out.
I could feel the energy blockages just float away, and it was like this. Yeah, orgasmic.
Because this was after a while of us being separated. Like, we didn't actually spend that much time together. We kept kind of coming and then going and then coming and then going.
Exactly. And we're like, we'll look at each other and have a laugh and stuff.
Yeah.
And
the snake.
Yeah, the snake. Yeah. What was I doing? I was like stretching, and I'd see you like by the river. You just watching yourself.
I was just in the water, sitting on a rock, and I'm just like splashing myself, talking to Amy, and then I look up and see Tom kind of like this. So I was like, "What's he doing?" I'm like a little snake over there. Like, huh? Like,
and I just see you like past the grass, and I just see you like. We're just like laughing hysterically like children.
And by this time, there were a lot more people actually at the waterfall. But I think they're kind of so used to people like us hanging around that area that yeah, it was just
Goddamn
normal.
hippies, basically.
Probably.
So I was lying down looking at the clouds and it was like looking majestic and divine. It was the best, right? And I just took the drag. I was like, and then the visuals kind of went like more white. It was almost like smoking DMT, but like a really loving version of it in a way. Because like DMT makes me a little bit antsy, but this was like, and then when I released that exhale, it was like all the worries that I had just floated away. And I was going fine. I was having a good time, connected with nature, myself. But there was also a little bit of that unsettling feeling just in the background. It wasn't much to affect my trip for the negative, of course not, but it was still there. The weed was like this familiar cousin that came along. That it's like that guy that you always feel comfortable hanging out with, and it's good to catch up. That's what weed was like in that state. So it just dissolved the rest of that unsettling feeling. I was stoned, but then I was like really tripping on mushrooms. And then we started like laughing together and like, I don't know, we're acting like toddlers and
Oh, it was so funny because we kept looking
Like,
into each other's eyes, and I'm like, your eyes are like gold. And it's like, your eyes are like purple and green.
Yeah, purple and green. One side is purple and the other side is green. Whoa.
And then I was like, so this is what it's like to trip together.
Yeah. And then we just started laughing hysterically and yeah, just
And then we had like our own
being
little
little goofs.
inside jokes like happening, like just being silly and
almost telepathic in a way. Like we slipped into another dimension or like a frequency that was like
Yeah.
an exclusive Tom and Yesenia frequency.
It kind of felt like we were in a little bubble.
Mm.
Like honestly, I remember it, and I remember thinking just being in this little
Well, 'cause sometimes
love
we speak
bubble,
Spanish as well.
and yeah, true. But I could see like a pink purple phase around us, like just not phase, haze around us, and it was nice. And then every now and then I'd pop my head back out and go back into my own kind of world, and then I'll hysterically laugh and then come back to him, and then we'll hysterically laugh, and etc.
Yeah.
It's an ongoing laughing cycle.
And then I was like talking to Kai for a while, and we're just having like deep conversations about life and the cosmos, those type of conversations. And yeah, that's pretty much sums up the whole story. I had a good time. Mushrooms went down. We went to get some food, and that was the end of that chapter.
And that's the end of that chapter.
Yeah. What do you think about these mushrooms compared to the ones that you've had here?
They felt similar, like in air, but more earthly rather than spacey. Whereas the ones here that I've experienced, I feel more in tune with the stars and the sky and energies around that way. But then it could be the set and setting as well. Whereas the blue meanies,
The dose.
and the dose, whereas
This was the smallest dose that you've ever had.
You reckon?
Yeah, for sure.
Really? The
Yeah.
smallest dose I've ever had?
Yeah.
Oh, I have no
how
idea.
many times have you tripped on mushrooms? Like twice?
Twice.
Well, 3 times now. So. So it just goes to show that sometimes dose, even though physiologically you're taking less psilocybin and psilocin, the trip ended up being more intense than a 5+ gram heroic dose in silent darkness of a much potent species.
I had serious ayahuasca throwbacks as well.
Yeah.
So it was really
And so I had to be the tripping trip sitter in that situation. And usually when I'm tripping in the past, like I've kind of struggled and have gotten overwhelmed by these type of experiences. But yeah, this time I handled myself really well. And like, I've had, a month ago, some pretty intense ayahuasca experiences. And I guess I'm a little bit more, I have more tools in my belt to be able to handle more challenging experiences. So I think we went pretty good. I mean, like your trip didn't affect me in any negative way. So
I tried really hard.
I don't want you to
not
feel
let
like, oh, maybe, if I was having a rough time, maybe I'm kind of, fucking up his trip a bit or whatever.
I did go through that.
Nah,
I did
you're
go
fine.
through that, but I was like, I can't be that guy. I can't ruin their trip. I can't. Which was a lot of what I had to deal with during my trip. Like there was deeper deeper lessons to
Yeah.
that. So
Definitely. Yeah, sometimes the mushrooms guide choose your dose. I find it also interesting that your sensitivity tends to go up the more experiences, at least based on our personal journeys.
yeah,
It doesn't really take much to go there. It's like you've already opened those doors, so it doesn't really take you much to step into that dimension. And I especially loved being in nature and just being a jungle boy, like climbing up the waterfall and feeling just the raw energy of that, and swimming underwater and climbing rocks and I don't know, being primal animals. I love it. If I could go back in time, I would have jumped in from the waterfall at the beginning instead of just like sitting there meditating.
yeah.
But you would have done the opposite. That's why it's different. Yeah.
Yeah, we
Different
talked about
strokes
it
for
after.
different folks.
We were saying about how with the peak, like, he was like, I should have jumped into the waterfall at the peak. And I was like, yeah, maybe me too. That would have helped. And then I was like, wait. And then I reanalyzed and re-remembered everything and why I didn't do that. I'm like, no, I'm good. I'm happy with my outcome. I'm happy with everything I decided to do. That just, it all worked out.
Exactly. It would have turned into it could have turned into a nightmare trip.
It could have turned into something, yeah.
Like, he's just going in there and it's like, you know that movie Hercules, how he's going in the underworld and all the lost souls and like trying to grab him and shit?
Yeah, that's how I feel like it would have been actually.
And because you're tripping balls, you would have been underwater.
You don't realize how accurate that would actually feel.
Massive thanks to all our patrons for supporting us. You guys are legends. If you receive any value from this content and want to give back, then feel free to check out Patreon, become a monthly supporter, or you can also get some merch. I actually did a pretty awesome photo shoot, so we'll show you some. Oh yeah, look at this, isn't that beautiful? Yeah, look at that. Sexy. Go get some merch if that interests you, or you can also do a one-time donation on PayPal. But yeah, that being said, hope everyone's staying safe during these crazy times in quarantine.
That's how bored we are in quarantine. We're like, fly.
Yeah. Stay safe, everybody. Have a good one, and I'll catch you on the next video. Peace. And of course, I just want to give a quick shout out to my mate Jason Stevenson, who does guided meditations. It's always good to prepare your mind, especially for these type of experiences. So go check it out. It's free, nothing to lose. Check the link in the description below. Have a good one, guys. Much love. Peace.